Hello and welcome to the Wellness Way's approach to autoimmune. Absolutely love this presentation because so many people are dealing with autoimmune disorders today. It's become just really an epidemic among people, especially in the United States. So this is our approach to autoimmune. So this is, I know, a very nasty picture when you look at it. And what this is this is the inside of somebody's colon. So this was a colonoscopy that was done for a patient of ours, and it is very, very rough, right? So you see a lot of inflammation, you see a lot of mucus. It just looks very swollen, very inflamed. And so this patient is one that was having blood in their stool, was getting monthly injections. This patient was only 13 years old, getting monthly injections and just really suffering, still blood in the stool, not growing, not gaining weight. So all the things that a 13-year-old should be doing. So we did some testing with this person after just no success with medications and just feeling horrible. And we found that there was a pathogenic bacteria in this person's gut. And so what we did is we cleared that up. And we were able to get to the point where this person is now growing, gaining weight, and feeling much, much better because we found one of the sources of the problem. This person had Crohn's disease. So, that is how it ties into the autoimmunity piece. Later, colonoscopy shows a very clean colon, a very uninflamed colon, not a bunch of mucus or stool stuck in there. So this is really what it should look like, right? So a lot of people get, like, when they aren't feeling great, they go to the doctor and they run a couple labs and they hear, good news, your lab results look great, everything's normal, you're the picture of health, but you feel so horrible, right? And so we're going to talk about some reasons that you might be feeling so horrible, and one of those might be autoimmunity. And so our goal today is to think a little bit differently about autoimmune disorders and about health and healthcare in general. And so we look at this burning house, and what do we do when we see that a house is on fire? Well, hopefully we call the fire department, we call 911, they come and they start spraying water on that house, right? They are spraying it through the window, but they can't get the fire out, so what do? They take their second tool. So their first tool was the hose and the water, right? And they take their second tool, which is an axe, and they chop down that front door and they go in and they spray water on your ceiling, your walls, and your floors. Now, is that water good for your ceiling, your walls, and your floors? Well, of course not, right? But at that moment, that's what that house needs so that that fire is put out and hopefully we can save some of the house. So then they put the fire out and then you ask them, hey, when are you coming back tomorrow? And they're like, yeah, not my job, right? You need to call another professional. Who's that professional that you're going to call? I hope it's a carpenter. That carpenter is going to come in, and I hope the first thing that they do is figure out what caused that fire in the first place and they fix that first, right? If it's wiring, fix that, whatever it was. And then they're going to start to rebuild your house. Right? So that's what you're left with. And then they start to rebuild the house, and you have the fireman that put it out, did a great job, and you have the carpenter that's putting things back together. So that's how we kind of think of the medical approach versus the wellness way approach, is that the medical approach is very much that fireman department type thinking, right? It's an emergency response, and that's what it's there for. If you have a heart attack, if you break your arm, that is where you should go. They're going to use two tools. They're going to use probably some type of medication or IV, and the other tool that they have is surgery, right? Just like the firemen have a hose and an axe, right? Same thing. We do things a little bit differently when we're rebuilding the body. So a lot of people will come to us after a big issue has happened, and they'll say, "What do I need to do to make sure that never happens again?" And so we do some testing, get some background information into their body as to why that catastrophe happened. So let's talk about the different approaches to autoimmune. So first you have the medical approach, and we treat that by giving usually an immune suppressant, right? So Humira is one of like the leading ones, but there are others as well. And that's that fireman department type treatment. Then you have the alternative medicine approach, right? So you could take fish oils and B12 and EPAs, right? All beautiful things. We love those things. However, it's just like what we call the Dr. Oz effect, right? So somebody goes on Dr. Oz on his show and they're like, I have autoimmune and I took fish oil and now I'm better. And so the next day, thousands of people go out and buy fish oil and it does nothing for their autoimmune disorder, right? And that's because it's missing something, right? It's missing testing. It's missing that connection to the rest of the systems in the body. And so we really have to look within all systems and be aware that anything could be the cause of this autoimmune disorder. We have to keep that in mind. So autoimmune disease has become a leading cause of death among middle-aged and young women in the U.S. That's a very scary if you're me, right? A lot of maybe the people watching this are in that group. And maybe now you're even in the older age group as a woman and you have multiple autoimmune disorders, right? So this is something that is devastating to our country, devastating to our population. So what is autoimmunity? So the immune system's function is to protect the body by responding to invading microorganisms, right? So like bacteria and viruses, things like that, its job is to attack that, all right? So under normal conditions, that immune response cannot be triggered against the body's own cells, but in certain cases, immune cells make a mistake, right? So remember that, and attack the very cells that are meant to protect. Okay, so let's remember that. All right, so what we know if we have an autoimmune disorder, and I can say this myself because I also have suffered from autoimmunity, getting a diagnosis is extremely frustrating and stressful because it is very hard to get that diagnosis. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of sometimes begging and pleading to finally get that diagnosis. And then there's so many types of autoimmune disorders that we might not catch them all. An ANA, which is what is typically ran, does not look at all of the types of autoimmune disorders. So National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences says autoimmune diseases are affecting more people for reasons unknown. Likewise, the causes of these diseases remain a mystery. Studies indicate these diseases likely result from interactions with genetic and environmental factors. Okay? So, genes, what do genes have to do with it? Well, my mom had autoimmune, I have autoimmune, my kids have autoimmune, it must be genetic. However, a lot of times when you look, our great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents did not have autoimmune, and really there was no talk of anything that was autoimmune type reactions, right? We didn't have the testing back then that we have now, but we did have people writing things down in journals and books and things like that. And people weren't really talking about the type of symptomology that is really present with autoimmunity. So we can kind of infer that this wasn't as big of an issue back 100 years ago. So, and what we really want to talk about is that genes don't change in a very short period of time. It takes a long, long time for like thousands of years, right, for genes to actually change. And so we are kind of feeling like maybe it's more environmental then, right? So, what are autoimmune disorders? Immune system disorders cause abnormally low activity or overactivity. So, it could be either um, in immune systems. Okay, so I have seen both. So when I've tested people with autoimmunity, I've seen very high numbers for the immune system and I've seen very low, right? And so how can we just say, oh, we just need to suppress the immune system, because some people that have autoimmunity might actually already be low in those immune cells. So, treatment, what does treatment look like, right? Well, we kind of already touched on that a little bit. We touched on like Humira, right? So, that's something that is very, very often used. But then there's something that is interesting, right? So, there's one autoimmune disorder that we know exactly what the cause is, right? And that's celiac. So in celiac, do you take an immune suppressant? No, you stop eating gluten, right? That's the way to fix it. Wow. So just taking out one thing is causing that immune system to go haywire. So if we think about that, could that also transfer to other autoimmune disorders? So what are they saying? They're saying the immune system makes a mistake. There's genetic factors. Women are most susceptible. Maybe we don't know why it's happening. Environmental factors, there's nothing that can be done. You're on medication for the rest of your life, and labs either don't change or they get worse. But then it hit me. What are autoimmune disorders? It's a response to an unknown trigger. The immune system may begin producing antibodies that, instead of fighting infections, attack the body's own tissues. But that is really important, in response, right? So the body is responding to something. So this next statement will change your life. The body does not make mistakes. It always responds. So there's always a response there to something that's not supposed to be there. The body only knows self from non-self. So the Swiss watch principle is something that we absolutely love, because this really shows how the body actually works, right? All of the systems really work together. And when they're working together nicely, you have homeostasis and you feel really, really good. If they're not working together because one of these systems is thrown off by something like a virus or bacteria or yeast or mold, that interrupts how that system works, and then we get symptoms. So what are you responding to? What are the things that you may be responding to? They could be food allergies. That's kind of a more simple one. Infections could be pregnancy, right? A lot of people have changes in autoimmunity during pregnancy and then after pregnancy, because our immune system drastically changes. Mental stress, inflammation, mold, deficiencies, reductions in immune barriers, right? Vaccines, physical trauma, and viruses. So, what are autoimmune diseases? Again, our bodies have an immune system, which is a complex network of special cells and organs that defends the body from germs and other foreign invaders. Okay, so when there is a flaw, the body makes antibodies. They attack normal cells by mistake, do they? At the same time, cells called T regulatory cells fail to do their job of keeping the immune system in line. Are they really failing? T regulator cells play a critical role in preventing autoimmunity, and their failure contributes to autoimmune diseases. Okay, so we have to ask ourselves why. Why is it failing? Why is it changing? Right? Because this doesn't happen in everybody. So what's different in that person that has this autoimmune disorder than from the next person who doesn't? So like I said, celiac disease is the only autoimmune disease that the medical system has recognized as having a trigger of ingesting gluten. So when I said food allergies can be contributing to your autoimmune disorder, and you're maybe like, no way. Right here, it says that gluten is the only known cause of celiac disease. So let's talk about how the immune system works. So we're going to use gluten as an example, okay? So for those people that have celiac autoimmune disorder, gluten is the toxin. Gluten is absolutely toxic for these people. If they continue to eat it throughout their life, a lot of them actually develop cancer from it, right? Because the body is trying to protect itself from that gluten, and over so much time, it can actually break the body down and cause massive, massive damage. So when that gluten goes in, we have what's called a macrophage, right? This macrophage tries to eat up the gluten, get rid of it. That might be where we're having like the stomach ache, a response. Then if that guy gets past that macrophage, that gluten molecule, we have a T helper cell there. So this is one of the T cells. That guy says, hey, natural killer cells and cytotoxic T cells, you guys need to go get rid of this bad guy. Then we make antibodies to that gluten molecule. So every time we see gluten, our body's going to flag it and say, hey, attack this. This is going to happen really fast. Then that T regulator cell sends suppressor cells to stop and suppress this reaction from continuing to happen when the gluten is gone, right? So this is how our immune system works. It's amazing. And this is just a simplified version. So this is a normal immune system panel that we run, right? So this one doesn't have a lot of issues in it. This one's looking pretty darn good. So you can see that we test a lot more than just our white blood cells. White blood cells give us a really good idea of like, hey, is there a big problem? Is there not? But running this lymphocyte subset can really tell us so much more about how the immune system is responding. It doesn't tell us what it's responding to. It just tells us where it's responding. So this one looks really good. The T cells are nice and robust. And then the natural killer cells are looking pretty good there. And then those B cells, which are the antibodies, right? But look at this. All of a sudden now, those absolute natural killer cells are really high. So this do you think this could be where somebody would get autoimmune because those natural killer cells just keep killing, and all of a sudden they're starting to kill healthy tissues? That could absolutely happen, right? And so we need to figure out why these natural killer cells are continuing to fight even though maybe a virus is gone, or maybe it's not, right? Maybe the body needs a little bit of help getting rid of a virus. Okay, so big one, HIV/AIDS, right? So this is the human immune deficiency that we all know so well. Like everybody knows what this is, and that's why we're using it here. So when somebody gets acquired immune deficiency, HIV, that when that ramps up, the immune system also will start to ramp up with it early, right? But over years, as you can see, that that HIV continues to attack, right? It continues to lower the immune response. And eventually our immune system gets very tired, okay? And it goes down, 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 right? Because our immune system cannot fight forever at a very high rate. It gets exhausted. So instead of using HIV, we can use something like Epstein-Barr virus, which is super, super common. So a more well-known term for Epstein-Barr virus is mono, right, or the kissing disease. And so Epstein-Barr virus is actually the virus that causes that mono symptomology. So that same thing happens with any virus, you guys. It's not just HIV. It's really intense with HIV, but those same symptoms and that same pattern is happening with any virus or infection that the body is not able to kill off. So, what causes the body to not be able to fight that off? Stress, sugar, vaccines, birth control, Humira, right? So, all of these things can make it harder for the body to fight off those yeast, parasites, opportunistic infections, cytomegalovirus, parvovirus, right? So all of these things can just make it super, super hard for the body to be able to fight off infection. Allergies. What about allergies? Allergies occur when your immune system reacts to a foreign substance, such as pollen, right? That doesn't cause a reaction in most people. So some people have this reaction, but most people don't. Your immune system produces substances known as antibodies, right? So we talked about those are B cells. When you have allergies, your immune system makes antibodies that identify a particular allergen as harmful, even though it isn't, right? Nobody should die from peanuts. It's not actually that harmful, right? And so that is something we have to look into of why the immune system is making such a big deal out of something as simple as peanuts. So this is a food allergy test. This is what they look like when we run them. And so this is a 36-year-old with psoriasis. And so you can see a lot of these foods that showed up as allergies are actually very healthy foods. However, they are not doing this woman any justice right now, right? Because every time she eats one of these things, there is an immune system response and more inflammation starts to occur. Okay, so this is the next time that she got this ran. Look at how different it is. So she avoided that first set of food allergies, and now she doesn't have as many, right? Her immune system calmed down. It's not attacking so many things, and she's able to have more foods that aren't causing a negative reaction for her. So what about mental stress? What does mental stress have to do with anything? So sex hormones determine immune response. So females and males differ in energy consumption and nutritional requirements, which are based on interactions between environmental factors and sex hormones. So the studies in early 1940s ascertained that females have enhanced capability of producing antibodies. So if we produce more antibodies, is it then a mystery of why we have more autoimmune disorders? Probably not, right? So typically then we'll see more food allergies with women and we'll just see more symptoms overall in women than in men. And I find that doing the work that I do to be 100% true. So generally, testosterone has an immunosuppressive effect, while estrogen has an immunoenhancing effect on the immune system. So the man flu is a real thing. Men tend to feel it more, right? Because that testosterone, which they have more of, is more of an immunosuppressing hormone, while that estrogen is more of an immunoenhancing, okay? So let's talk about the steroid hormone pathway and how this works. So we have cholesterol at the top. Yes, your hormones are made from cholesterol. Yes, cholesterol is something that's needed in the body. You make it in your liver. A huge misconception is that we eat all of our cholesterol. That is not true. And that goes down into pregnenolone, progesterone, and out into our stress and sex hormones. So those stress hormones are going to be more of that progesterone, cortisol. Our sex hormones are going to be on that DHEA, testosterone, and estrogen. Okay, so all this is how it works. They actually flow from hormone to hormone through pathways. So our stress pathway, like I said, goes from that progesterone to that cortisol to that cortisone. Women do tend to have more stress. Stress does play a massive role in the immune system and immune system health. If our body is constantly stressed out, we tend to have either at first, a lot of times we have a more active immune system, and then after a long period of stress, that a lot of times that immune system starts to fall. So what about deficiencies? Vitamin D, been associated with autoimmune thyroid diseases or Hashimoto's and Graves. Impaired vitamin D signaling has been reported to encourage thyroid tumorigenesis. Okay, so that means that just having adequate amounts of vitamin D will lower your susceptibility to having things like Hashimoto's and Graves. Super easy. It's extremely easy to get vitamin D. If you're not getting enough from the sun, then just take some vitamin D, right? There's now an increasing interest in repurposing vitamin D to down-regulate pathological immune system responses in patients with autoimmune or inflammatory diseases. Higher levels of vitamin D may induce many different anti-inflammatory functions, including increasing the number and function of T regulatory cells. Absolutely awesome. So when I look at labs and I see vitamin D, I like it to be even a little bit higher in people who tend towards autoimmunity than in just a person who does not have autoimmune disorders. Let's talk about the gut and the role the gut plays in autoimmunity. Okay, so the IgA mucosal immune system, right? So this is the immune system that occurs inside of your intestines in the mucus layer. So we have mucus in there, or you should have a good amount of it. Really is a protective barrier for your gut. The production of IgAs is facilitated by a particular regulatory T cells. And so sometimes when we do stool testing, we see a high IgA, and that just tells us that there's more immune function happening in that barrier. So this is kind of a picture of what's going on at the GI barrier. A lot of times I think we just think it's a big tube and that's it. There's nothing else going on there. However, it is amazing. There are so many bacteria, there's epithelial cells, tight junctions, remember it's those M cells, enteroendocrine cells, goblet cells, right? So all of these cells doing jobs like the goblet cells that make and secrete mucus, right? Very, very important because we need that good barrier. We have those tight junctions so that the foreign invader can't get through into our bloodstream, right? So we need like a nice gut barrier. We need it to be uninflamed, and we need it to be very tight so that we're not having more reactions to things like foods and bacteria and toxins. So this is a patient who has rheumatoid arthritis. And so you can see there that fecal secretory IgA. So right here is massively high, right? So there's a lot of inflammation. Now, rheumatoid arthritis, you would think has nothing to do with the gut, but look at how inflamed the gut is as well. Everything is connected, right? So then looking at additional bacteria and yeast infections, this patient had a lot, right? 5 extra bacteria in their gut, and then 2 yeast strains. And those are even a potentially pathogenic one. So, not great. We need to clean that up, and hopefully, that patient will have some really good effects and less inflammation, especially in that gut. And that will then relate to the rest of the body. A lot of times, inflammation starts in the gut because that's where we're putting food in, and bacteria can come in that way, right? That's where a lot of things come into our body. So with autoimmune thyroid, here are this test is one that we do and oftentimes find antibodies that people have no idea that they had. So they're coming in with all these issues and they have no idea. We get people 50, 60 years old that have massive numbers in those antibodies, and they do have autoimmune thyroid and have no idea. So this is a really important test. It's really inexpensive, and it's just really good to know. And then here's a viral connection to that, right? So with autoimmune thyroid, that Epstein-Barr virus, like I was talking about before, that virus that causes mono has a lot to do with that. It loves this soft, squishy thyroid tissue. So oftentimes that Epstein-Barr virus will just sit in our thyroid tissue, and it will go from being inactive to reactive, and it'll reactivate. A lot of times people don't know that that can happen, but it can, and it's a big issue because then that is what those immune cells are attacking. Those T regular cells are attacking that virus. But then when it goes to inactive, it keeps on attacking, right? So, but then it comes back to reactive. So the body is being really tested there with that virus that we're not killing off. So look at that. So we went from having both of the thyroid antibodies being high to just really one, and even lowering that a bit. So let's talk about this patient. So this patient is a 6-year-old with alopecia. So alopecia is when the cells are attacking the hair follicles, so the hair is falling out, right? So with this patient, we found that mold was actually the issue. So living in a moldy environment can definitely be a huge immune it can cause a big immune response to, this foreign invader, which is mold. We are not supposed to have this in our body, and it's extremely toxic. It can cause all different kinds of issues, especially mental issues and fatigue. So, how vaccines strengthen your baby's immune system. Your child is exposed to thousands of germs every day in his environment. This happens through food he eats, air he breathes, and things he puts in his mouth. So, vaccines is become more and more controversial because they don't tell us everything that is in it. And right now, our CEO and owner of our company has really talked more and more about vaccines, and is actually taking an immune vaccine type class from Harvard, and they're talking about the components in the vaccine and how they know that they're harmful. Okay, so just obviously, again, COVID-19 vaccine, right? We've heard so much about that in the news, and more is coming out. There are, I believe it's 7 pages of autoimmune disorders that can result from this vaccine that have come to light. So we're seeing more and more of these autoimmune disorders. So we love this analogy because if a plant is looking unhealthy, we don't give it a vaccine, right? We don't give it chemicals. What do we give it? We give it water, we give it sunlight, and maybe we give it some minerals. How are we any different? Well, I love the saying that we're just complicated houseplants because that's pretty much it. So what do you need to do? You need to get tested. You need to figure out what is your trigger, okay? So we have a lot of testing available to us. It's absolutely incredible, all of the things that you can test. So I highly recommend looking and getting tested. So 4 questions you might have about your thyroid or about any autoimmune disorder that you have. What's wrong with me? How can you help me? How long is it going to take, and how much will it cost? Well, the first 3 questions require testing. And then that last question is very easy to answer. So right now, because you watched this video, you can have a first consult for $99. It includes a detailed health history, review of past test results, a consultation, and lab recommendations. So if that's something of interest to you, please get on my schedule. It fills up very quickly because look at all the sick people we have, right? And then how to get started, what are your next steps? So we have a QR code here that you can sign up for more information. You can call from our staff member for further questions or get scheduled, complete new patient paperwork, and send over test results. And then connect with us. We are all over the internet. We have a website, TheWellnessWay.com. We're on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. We're on all the things, which I think Twitter is now called X. So that's a new thing, right? Everything's always changing, which is good. So I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation, and I look forward to meeting you in the near future.